Well, good afternoon. My name is Paul Newnham, and I am the CEO at the SDG2 Advocacy Hub, and it's my absolute pleasure to be moderating today's session titled Feeding Human Capital Through Global Commitments and Action. When we talk about feeding human capital, we're really talking about the foundation of every society. People's ability to grow, to learn, to lead, and to contribute. And food is at the heart of that. It's not just fuel. In fact, I really don't like the word fuel. Good food is opportunity, it's memories, it's emotion, it's dignity, and it's love. And right now, 1 in 3 people globally cannot access a healthy diet. And that means billions are denied their full potential before they even reach adulthood. Malnutrition doesn't only stunt bodies, it stunts economies, ideas, and futures. The Paris Peace Forum brings us together to talk about cooperation. And food is one of the most powerful levers we have to build peace. When people are nourished, communities are more stable. When farmers can adapt to climate shocks and earn a fair income, societies thrive. Good food for all, which is essentially what we're discussing, is simple and yet profound. Everywhere, everyone should have access to nutritious, affordable, and sustainably produced food that requires translating global commitments into real, coordinated action on the ground. So today's discussion, we're going to talk about human potential by investing in all kinds of areas, from school meals to social protection to resilient food systems that deliver not just calories, but delicious food that offers good health and hope. It's about how governments, business, and citizens each have a role in turning commitments into tangible actions. We have a terrific panel of experts who bring perspectives from international organizations, philanthropy, the private sector, and we're going to be highlighting opportunities for scaling up action across health, food systems, agriculture, and education. We're going to explore innovative financing, governance solutions, and cross-sector partnerships that can move beyond fragmentation to unlock scalable, lasting impact. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to our guests here on the panel. We have Dr. Leonard Mirzi, the head of unit at the European Commission, Director General for International Partnerships and Sustainable Agri-Food Systems and Fisheries. Welcome. We have Dr. David Laborde, the Director of the Agrifood Economics Division at the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization. Welcome. We have William Moore, Executive Director of the Eleanor Cook Foundation, and we have Adeline Lacan, the CEO of Group Nutriset. So welcome, everyone. We're going to get started. I'm going to come straight to you, David. The FAO recently published the 2025 State of Food Security and Nutrition in the World. What's the current state of malnutrition globally?
So, good afternoon, everyone. You already give a bad taste of the story, or a story that tastes bad, sorry, to start with that. Now, so as of today, we still have 673 million people that are in chronic hunger. So people that does not have enough calories. But when you think about how many people are food insecure, so people that have to sacrifice a lunch because they don't have the economic means to pay for it, or sacrifice the quality of what they eat, it's basically 2.1 billion people. And as you say, you have basically 2.6 billion people that cannot afford a healthy diet. So that will be the basic of what we want to do every day. It's too far, too expensive, not enough income. So this is what we try to address. And I'm not even talking about the 300 million people that depend on food aid just to survive. Now, as you pointed out, all of these also have a cost, and often what we call an hidden cost. And that's something also we monitor at FAO. And the fact that we have agri-food systems that are not efficient enough, we are losing 10% of global GDP every year. And 2/3 of it come from the lack of good diets and basically a cost of human capital. I mean, 600 years ago, a famous, at the time, French economist was saying, il n'y a de richesse que d'hommes. So what creates wealth is people. And so what you invest in people and what the food you give to people has an impact on your economic growth.
So I like that connection. And why would you say malnutrition is remaining so persistent and this cost? Because we're seeing just this continue.
So I will say we have structural problems. One is economic inequality. And that's a major issue because even sometimes when the food is available, people, as I said, don't have the economic means to do it. And even if you want to create a market for healthy and delicious food, you need people to be able to pay for it. And all societies have become richer and richer, but the income inequality within countries and across country remain pervasive. And after you have shocks, climate, conflict that even disrupt more the system. And that's what we need to address. But it's just one part of the story, unfortunately, because even in environment where money is available, some people make not the right choice in terms of food and food quality. It can be linked to what we call the food environment, the option you have. If you just go and you go to the cafeteria and what you have is not very healthy, you are not going to take 1 hour to find the good food, even if you can pay for it. But sometimes also we have asymmetry of information. We don't fully understand what we eat. And that's another issue. And at the end, that gives us the story of what we call the double burden of malnutrition. On one hand, you have people that doesn't eat enough and suffer from it. And on the other hand, you have people that eat badly and suffer from it. And the situation today that during your same lifetime, you can face the two things. And there is economic and even, I will say, medical reason why you ended up there.
Well, thanks, David, for laying out a little bit of the scale of the challenge we're faced with. And I think it's imperative, given this scale, that we see governments, institutional bodies, philanthropies commit to action. Leonard, let me bring you in. At the 2025 Nutrition for Growth Summit held in Paris this past March, the European Commission committed €3.4 billion through to 2027. What are some of the priority initiatives that are being accelerated?
Thank you. And indeed, with Adeline and others in the room, we were proud. We showed leadership a few months ago. Seems a bit long ago, but it's only 7 months ago. And I think the total figure is just shy of 30 billion. Commission mobilized, committed 3.4, and with Team Europe 6.5. I think, as David said, the issue of money is important, and in the European Union we are proud about mobilizing, committing. We have Council conclusions and Team Europe in terms of both the solidarity, so the acute hunger hotspots, the Yemens, the DRCs, the Haitis, the Sudans of this world, clearly critical hotspots which unfortunately are often forgotten. And then the production side, and I think that is also my role as with my team and with the different services, to give a clear signal on production and scale. So what we are trying to do even in the nutrition space is to create nutrition-sensitive investments at scale. We can't continue doing small pilot projects. We have a lot of blending instruments, but the blending instruments are not sort of big ticket sizes. They are ticket sizes of maybe less than 5 million. And if you want to be transformational, and even you, Paul, we go to conferences, events from UN Food Systems Summit, then African Food Summit, and then we have the COP and the Global Alliance on Hunger and Poverty. I think what is important and what events like today are important is that we coalesce together in terms of what needs to be the big ticket change to make it scalable. First of all, scalable in fragile context. That is complicated. How do you create the dynamics in fragile context in the Sahel or in the Horn of Africa? How do you create the private sector alignment to invest? Because we can easily go to the private sector and we tell them invest, but are our instruments fit for purpose? It's clear that blending is okay, but it's not good enough. Guarantees at scale with bankable portfolio of 100 million plus ticket sizes are relatively rare. And I think what is key also with financial institutions, and that is what we are trying to do in the momentum of the N4G, is to look at what are the private demand asks, where and how can we create local and regional markets, but create that landscape which has both an education, a climate, a digital. This is what Global Gateway is creating at 360 degrees, which bundles not only food, but education, wash, social protection. And that is more complicated, especially in a space of shrinking ODA.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate what you were talking about there in terms of really trying to prioritize through and find those moments. Also, what works and how do we take that to scale for that unlocking? One of the things that we're seeing is a desire for regional ownership for implementation and delivery of solutions as well. And there's a big shift going on in all parts of the world. So how are some of these investments, how are you thinking about supporting partner countries to strengthen their own capacity to deliver?
Clearly, country ownership is key. Like even today in Kigali, there is CADEP.
Yeah.
So for us, whatever we do has to be CADEP aligned. And it's not always easy because, again, we go to conferences and different conferences prioritize different value chains. That's another thing. We have to sort of decide which value chains. We can say in Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Cameroon, let's go for cocoa. That's what we call the low-hanging fruit. But then what can we do at scale on fruit and vegetables? So what we want from our partner countries is a prioritization of those value chains, not necessarily export commodities, which are important for foreign exchange, but also for the diversity of diets. So we have asks also of European companies to scale up fruit and vegetables.
Yeah.
But we don't always get the traction from the countries. So that is a bit, we want to push fruit and vegetables or livestock or blue aquatic foods, and we don't get the traction. We get a shopping list of 15 priorities. And we are telling the countries, I'm sorry, you go back to the drawing board and you need to prioritize and see how Team Europe aligns, both in terms of technology, investment, cold storage, warehousing, road, port infrastructure, but you can't do a bit of everything. And I think what is important also within a continental approach is to see who has the competitive and comparative advantage on value chains, which creates regional dynamics in a trade corridor point of view. Africa can only grow if there are those regional dynamics which are not happening at scale today. So that is what we are trying to nudge the countries to prioritize, because we are in a world of prioritization, but also better coordination of us as donors, and not to do everything as we did maybe 5-10 years ago.
No, thank you, Leonard. And I like that you mentioned the potential for alignment along processes such as CADEP, because I think, this is the only continent in the world that has a joined up approach and vision and strategy, and we need to be championing that, supporting that, so that actually really creates and almost becomes that amplifier for some of the investments that are being made. And so it's great to hear about how you're thinking strategically around that. Adeline, let me bring you in. We've been discussing this kind of conversation around local ownership, implementation, delivery, partnership has come up. Nutriset's been a pioneer in local production of nutrition solutions and in building sustainable localized supply chains. How can the private sector contribute to building stronger, more resilient nutrition systems, particularly in these priority countries?
Yeah, thank you. I will take the word first of David saying that to prevent malnutrition, we need to have people having capacity to purchase, capacity to have access to the product, but to pay for the product. And as a private sector, when we think about fighting malnutrition, we were thinking that be part of the development of local economy is also a way to fight malnutrition. And it's one of our tools because we know how to develop private sector, so we developed this factory. So the first idea was how we can, as a private sector, be part of the development of economy, which is a very big tools for people, of course, to be able to pay for the product, but also by paying taxes for the government, to be able to put good policy. After you have to work with them on the policy, but to pay taxes. So it's a full system that bring economy at a level where people can access. Secondly, if we take the word of Leonard about ownership by the government, it was very important for us when we start local production to have government taking malnutrition as their own issue. I'll take the example of Ethiopia. We've all heard about malnutrition in Ethiopia. But in 2005, when we start working in Ethiopia, the government was not recognizing its own malnutrition because a government, that's the last thing the government is supposed to do, or first things to feed the population. And having their own factory, they were able to say, okay, we can be part of the solution with our factory. So the government was more and more involved also in fighting malnutrition. But it's a full chain, working with agriculture, working with the health system, with the institution. So it can work only if we are part of the system, not just a factory, but already part of the system, and becoming a kind of nutrition local champion and being part of the discussion, as we can have in France, but the same in Ethiopia or in Nigeria or Burkina Faso, for example. And third, I would say that if we speak about resilience, we can see nutrition as a resilience for the body also. But economy is a resilience for a country. If we look the country where we were, we had a lot of coup, we had a lot of war. We were in Sudan, we were in Niger, Burkina Faso, Guinea. And we can see that when there is a coup, for example, you can have a new government, but as long as the economy is not going back, the country is not running anymore. So if you've got this company and they are able to go back quickly after this kind of crisis, it's a kind of resilience also for the country.
Yeah. So drilling down a little bit into this, obviously the private sector exists to create and deliver goods and services that meet people's needs, but also to generate profit, to stimulate economic growth. Talk to me a little bit about what is the incentive to really get more private sector investment in nutrition systems?
I don't know. I think that more and more, there is market, for sure. There is a market in France. We can see more and more people, elderly people, we understand more the need of nutrition. If we look at the big company and nutrition in Africa, I would say that Africa is the last continent not totally explored or not explored at all for the market development. So we can bring agri-food and high-quality agri-food company to invest in Africa because there is a huge market. That is the market of tomorrow. So it's not very nice, and I would like having more company only doing that for nutrition. But if we are honest, we can attract them by economy, for economy, because it is the market of tomorrow.
No, absolutely, and I think that the focus on health is growing, and there's been this big conversation around sustainability and like food and how, but I think health is actually driving that more, and I think it's partly because of the challenges that David was saying around healthy diets and the impacts, but also the costs that are happening from a government perspective. Will, bringing you into the conversation, Alan O'Crook Foundation has long championed strengthening supply chains for RUTF. How can targeted interventions and collaboration across actors accelerate progress towards more resilient and nutritious food systems?
Thanks, Paul. And it's really nice to see you here. It's been a while. I want to also thank our hosts at Paris Peace Forum and thank all of you guys for coming over to our little corner for this session. We're in such a beautiful city, and I'm sorry that you have to look at my ugly big toes with this boot on today. I mean, first of all, on the health side, I think that's something that most people don't fully know. Maybe you all here in this largely expert audience do know, but the average person around the world doesn't know that health is so important to malnutrition outcomes. When we think nutrition, malnutrition, people think food, right? But actually, when we look at what are the most cost-effective ways to reduce malnutrition at scale, they're almost all health interventions. Large-scale food fortification is one of the few food system sides, but health has so much to bring to the table in terms of what we can actually scale up and see reductions in population-level malnutrition. So what do we mean by health systems interventions? Mostly very simple solutions that have existed in Europe or the US, where I'm from, for a long time. Good quality prenatal vitamins before a kid's even born, making sure that both mother and child have access to good nutrition in the womb. When a child is born, making sure that moms have basic support for breastfeeding. They know how to do it. They know why it's important. You don't even need to provide them a commodity for that. It's almost free. Vitamin A supplementation in a lot of these contexts where we see very high rates of severe malnutrition. Vitamin A is an amazing solution. It's a couple drops of this vitamin A solution on a kid's tongue. And you only have to give it to them about twice a year for the first 2 years of life. And it's incredibly life-saving. It boosts their immunity. And last but not least, as Paul was talking about, if a child does become severely malnourished, treatment. We have to get them treatment. And we treat them with what's called ready-to-use therapeutic food. My colleague here runs one of the largest manufacturers of this ready-to-use therapeutic food. It is a miracle product, if you don't mind me saying so. It's basically these small packets of peanuts and milk powder and a micronutrient blend and an oil emulsifier, and I won't say anymore because I'm sitting next to a real expert on this. But when we get kids who are severely malnourished, kids that you see on TV in Gaza or Sudan who are just completely skin and bones on the edge of death, if we can get them a few of these packets for just a few weeks, we see an incredible, almost miraculous recovery out of this state of severe malnutrition because their bodies are so malnourished that they actually need these specialized foods for a short period of time to get that boost in nutrition and immunity to be nursed back to full health. So how do we scale them up? How do we scale this up sustainably? First of all, I think we have to decide, do we want to scale up solutions like treatment of severe malnutrition? And I really like what Leonard was saying about we've got to make bigger bets here, and we have to focus. And in a time of restrained resources, what do we really want to achieve? And we got to say, what is the indicator, and then what are the solutions that are going to be most cost effective towards that indicator? There's still debate. I mean, we've got 1 million kids who die every year of wasting. On a normal year, 1 million kids are dead from starvation. If we got them treatment with this ready-to-use therapeutic food, over 90% of those children would not die. So we can, if we choose, scale up this one solution that will essentially allow us to finally live in a world where children no longer regularly die of starvation. But we have to decide we want to do that. We can scale up this product. Here we go. Here's an example of what it looks like. So you get a few of these to a kid just for a limited period of time. And once kids get back to health, they usually don't relapse, actually. Some do, but most don't. So we have to decide if we want to do it. There's been debate about whether or not we should. I believe we should. I think it's crazy that we let 1 million kids die when we have, this packet cost about 23 cents. So it's less than $1 a day to treat these kids. To do it sustainably, we have to not only decide that we want to do it and we want to scale it up, we have to recognize that this is actually not a humanitarian issue. Most kids think of these kids, most people think these kids are just in war zones. A lot of them are in war zones, but the majority of them are not. The majority of them are in very stable development settings like northern Uganda or northern Kenya or northern Nigeria, where we can reach these kids. I mean, it's stable, health systems exist, but we have to acknowledge that this is not just a humanitarian problem. This is a development problem. If we want to keep reducing child deaths, we've got to have multi-year financing for this. We can't just fund it out of our emergency humanitarian budgets. So that's really, on the sustainability front, we've got to treat this as a global health problem, not a humanitarian problem. And we have to work as donors to set aside multi-year resources so that people can plan ahead, producers can plan ahead, implementers can plan ahead, and we can really scale it sustainably.
Thanks, Will. And would you say that is the one solution that you would really encourage people to get behind, or is there?
Well, I mean, at the Eleanor Cook Foundation, cost effectiveness is really our North Star, and scalability. What can you scale and what will most cost effectively save a child's life from malnutrition? RUTF is one of the most cost effective child survival solutions out there. So it's a great place to put your money. If you're not going to put it there, I just encourage anybody who's making financial decisions to go through the process of saying, what is the thing that you're trying to solve? What is the problem you're trying to solve? What is the outcome indicator that will allow you to know whether or not you're solving that problem? And then work backwards to see what are the most cost-effective solutions to get there. And frankly, most government donors, most philanthropies do not go through that process. Implementers also do not go through that process. So other people might care about education outcomes, or they might care about chronic malnutrition, stunting. For us, it's child deaths from malnutrition. So if you care about those other things, there's probably other solutions that you should fund that would be most cost effective. But really look at the evidence. There's been hundreds of millions of dollars of research in this space to figure out what works, and we don't utilize that research nearly as well as we should. So that would be my main encouragement, is just look at the evidence and fund what we know works and focus on a few big bets.
I love it. Well, thank you, Will. So I'm going to try and see now whether we can do a lightning round, a lightning response. So I'm going to try and keep you short, sharp. In Australia, we call this don't beat around the bush. I don't know what that really means, but that's what we say. But so this is going to be a bit of a fast-paced financing accountability collaboration round. So I'm just going to give you each a question, and we want under 2 minutes, and then we're going to see if we've got a little bit of time for some questions from the audience. So, David, can you share one key insight on how countries can better align humanitarian and development financing for effective nutrition action? What's needed to get this done financially?
So that's a critical question, because as we have said, there's already some hotspot where we have this. So I think the most important story that we see evolving is to be able to act at the right time and not try to solve the problem when it has degenerated, when it has been a problem at scale. Because if you're already in the crisis, you are already losing physical capital, human capital, time, and the cost of intervention is very high. So what we want to act is when we see the crisis coming. And today, with early warning system, with remote sensing, with AI, with just good knowledge, we can act before it's too late. And if we do it, we can reduce the cost of intervention by 7, by 10. So having this information system, having this capacity to act, and having actually a more automatic system, not to have to beg for money, but to have this infrastructure is important. And that's where also we can mobilize the private sector, not on the production side, but financial markets. You can insure, you can reinsure to make sure you have the money at the right time, and that at FAO in order to support the countries, both the recipient and the donors. This year, we launched both a situation room and a financial facility for food crisis, and that's how we can help, because if you at humanitarian level, you are already losing some of your development expenditure. And if you don't develop, you have more crisis. So we need to break the cycle at the right time.
Thank you. And I love that, breaking the cycle right at the right time, using the data to be able to inform those decisions. And I think data is something that is a concern at the moment with some of the funding cuts, because a lot of cuts have gone to data systems, which means we're going to be flying blind on what's actually going on. So very important. Leonard, we've seen a shrinking of the traditional pots, such as ODA. What's one way that the EU is supporting innovative funding and aligning donor priorities in spite of those shrinking funding pools?
I think what William mentioned, basically we are in the phase of 2025, heavy shrinking from the US, a big player in our UTF. And many ask us, can the EU and the member states fill the gap? We can't fill the gap of the US on our own. So first of all, we need to coordinate better within the European Union, and that's what we try to do in Team Europe, to better coordinate and align. What do we want to do where, and we can't be all over the place without coordination. So first is coordination. We need also to attract new donors. There are new donors out there, but we can't see them at scale. It can't just be the EU to do what I call a big challenge of proportion that we don't even know what will be in 2026 and 2027. So we are in a cycle of dipping in terms of financial cycle. We will have a new financial cycle. And I think what is important is we need to understand how Nutriset and other companies, what is their ask in terms of scalable operations. But no one is mentioning that agri-food systems as such is not necessarily the top priority of all the countries, of all our partner countries. When we tell them what is a priority, they might not always say agri-food is a priority. We see it in CADEP in terms of domestic resource mobilization. Less than 10 countries prioritize 10% of their public investment. If that doesn't happen, funding will go to energy, will go to critical raw materials, will go to digital, but not necessarily to agri-food. That's already a big challenge. So first thing is rationalization of the facilities. David mentioned the facility of food crisis. We understand. Today I heard about the accelerator on school meals. I know there are other accelerators. There's the Global Alliance. We have CFS. We can't have this big space where we can't target the scale of the money we used to have 5-10 years ago and what I call proliferation of initiatives. So that is, I think, key. And then better coordination on the ground and being more close to the private sector to understand what their bottlenecks are. Is there a bottleneck of scalability?
Yeah.
Where? How to create hubs and how to basically mobilize the resources we have and link it to financial institutions, because it's not grant money which will do the trick. It is the leveraging effect with innovative finance and with financial institutions who make them bankable. Yeah. And we still have not sufficient bankable projects that financial institutions want to invest in.
No, I think it's so critical. And I think what you were saying about the proliferation of initiatives as well I think that's been something that we've seen over the last 5 years. I think we need the next 5 years to be a focus on making the initiatives that we've already committed to work, making the commitments that we've made work, and finding ways to invest in ways of policies that work, investments that work, actions that deliver those results, because we are in a challenging space. So Nutriset Groups aims to extend its reach to an additional 1.5 million people at this time by 2027, and yet there's been a big pressure on the environment at the moment. What do you see as so critical to really achieving this goal?
I think that today we need to be innovative. I think, of course, we can do research in nutrition, but we've got product, that's not the issue, and we need to be innovative on how this product reach the children. And I think when we speak about finance, and I've heard a lot since yesterday about we need to de-risk finance for big company, etc. I think it's not the issue. The issue is not that, is that the children we want to reach, they don't have the money to pay for nutrition. I've got a good friend where I used to say that in US, 10% of people are eating with voucher. We want to ask them paying for nutrition. Maybe we could say, okay, they're able to pay for food. If we want them to have nutritious food, let's pay for the nutrition. How can we subsidize that? If we want to create a market, we can do social marketing, we can do very good product, alternative product. They don't have the money to have access to the nutrition. So here we need to be innovative, but not in the financing of the company, but in how, on who pay for the nutrition, the plus nutrition in the product.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I like that. There's a partnership there, I guess, in terms of how you can gather people around that and create kind of the right model. Will, often there's a lot of conversation around ODA, around government, and how we turn to governments for financing solutions of scale. What role do you think philanthropy plays to ensure that evidence-based solutions are being financed?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm less sure on what role philanthropy should play today than I was a few years ago. I used to say philanthropy's job is to get out there and take risks, fund innovation, research, do things that governments are unwilling or unable to do. Given that almost every donor government has cut their budget by double digits in the last few years, that's up for debate. I think for at least the short term, all of the philanthropists I know are feeling like we have to focus more of our resources on actually helping to deliver the routine services that people need to survive over the coming years, because the old donor governments are still doing important work, but they're under great strain and they are cutting budgets significantly. So these days we're looking, we still fund research. Research is really fun to fund, but we're looking at we are using much more of our resources on actually trying to fund scale up of the highest impact, most proven solutions alongside governments. So we're doing that alongside donor governments. A couple of years ago, we worked with the last US administration to scale up this product. We put in with another philanthropy $50 million of our money, and we got the US government to say, we'll put in $200 million to match that. Samantha Power, who was running USAID at the time, really championed it and said, I want to also double our money again. So she ended up raising another $250 million. So in the end, we were able to see, our philanthropic commitment of $50 million turn into the largest ever investment in treatment of severe malnutrition, well over $500 million. And we were able to, last year, we went from reaching about 1 in 5 kids with this who were severely malnourished to 73% of kids. It saved over 1 million kids' lives just last year, that scale up. So that's where we're looking at it now is how can we use philanthropic resources with our group of philanthropies to work with governments. Governments have got to show that they're making their dollars go further. And the invitation is out there to governments who are looking for these catalytic opportunities. We have a group of philanthropies who are willing to make $100 million plus commitments to do more scale up of these high impact solutions. But we've got to find governments who want to do it with us.
Yeah, no, and I think recognizing that shift that's going on and the role shift as well is really critical. I mean, as we talk about funding, I always remember that money hasn't gone away in the world. It's still there. And so how we access it has changed, and how we construct these partnerships has got to change. But the money's still there in the world somewhere. So it's also us thinking, how do we get out there? We've got 7 minutes, and I wanted to see if anyone had a question or two. I'll take 2 questions, no comments, but questions maybe. If there's any questions, and we'll try and answer them quickly. Have we got any questions? If not, I can ask our panelists.
There you go.
Oh, we got one there.
Great, thank you. I was stimulated actually by what you said, William, about the sort of getting the cost-effective solutions. But what about further downstream? Why do we have all these malnourished children? And I think that's the critical question we also need to look at from a systemic perspective. So maybe to any of the panelists, how do we, while it's maybe cost-effective in terms of we save this child's life, but how do we prevent those children from becoming malnourished and solving that systematic problem?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. It is the question. It is still a question, actually. Unfortunately, the true answer to why can't we just prevent these kids from becoming severely wasted is that we still do not have the tools. Our foundation funds millions of dollars of research every year to try and identify what can work, what will be cost effective when it comes to prevention. But the fact is, we do not know how to dramatically reduce rates of severe malnutrition at population level with the tools that we have. We can maybe take a little bits and pieces out, but most of the prevention solutions that we have are not nearly as cost effective when we look at sort of DALYs averted as treatment. So we want to get there. Obviously, I mean, the real solution to getting kids to not be severely malnourished is to end extreme poverty. That's what it's going to take. I mean, if you take a kid out of northern Uganda and you put him in the 5-star hotel in the capital city, they're not going to be malnourished. And it's going to be a long journey to get to that development. And in the meantime, we do not have tools that we can deploy tomorrow that are going to prevent most of those children from being malnourished. So in my opinion, in the meantime, it's our duty to at least keep them alive because we do have that tool.
David, you wanted to jump in?
Yes, and to follow up on this, but also maybe to give a bit of taste of hope, because I was saying, currently the meal tastes bad, but the menu overall is not so bad. I mean, 80 years ago when FAO was created, and what the world said, okay, we have to deal with food and agriculture, it was 70% of the global population that was in chronic hunger. Today it's 8%, still too much, too many people. But we have seen improvement through technology, with social policies. So yes, dealing with the economic inequality, as I was saying, dealing with poverty is a key part of the equation. Getting to make sure that everyone has clean water is good for health, is good when you eat. And so that's, this type of development we need. But I think we have shown that with the will, we can do it. As you say, there is still money around. Now, people make different choices. And when we talk about nutrition, when we talk about food and agriculture, we also need to make a stronger story. And to be organized when we tell the story, not to come with Christmas list. And to understand that in order to deal with the 300 million people that are in near famine condition, you need specific action. To deal with the 2.6 billion people that cannot afford healthy diet, you need different set of action that will also be done by different people. No one actor can solve all of this. So that's what we need coordination, and that's also what FAO we try to do with the plan that is a FAO Global Roadmap to achieve food security and nutrition in the context of climate action. But I think very solution, that's what I want to say. And maybe, since I have the microphone, the last thing, we talk about food that nourishes the body, that nourishes the brain, but I will say also nourishes the mind. And mental health, food, and diets are linked. And today they are also linked with anxiety about climate change. And this is additional cost that we have not even assessed today, but are growing, including in the young population, both in France, but if you are in Samoa today, and you don't know if your country is still going to be there in 25 years, don't be surprised if you go to comfort food that make you obese.
Yeah. Did you want to jump? Yeah.
I think we clearly need strong leadership at the highest level within the UN system. We speak about UN at 80. We don't know the ramifications of the landing of UN at 80. Clearly, averting conflict, tackling economic shocks, anticipating environmental shocks, creating the bundling between food, environment, social protection, wash. This is complicated stuff. When you, again, I always give the example, energy projects, you have one shot. A farm operation on vaccine, one shot. Nutrition, you don't have one shot. And political masters and politicians want silver bullets, short-term solutions at scale, which food system in its architecture is difficult. Also because we know that the priorities are changing. The geopolitics of food is not the same as the geopolitics of pharma. So I think what's clear, we need stronger dialogue, reprioritization, and better coordination, and some form of leadership at the highest level to also give a clear signal, starting with the African continent, that it can be done. We know what the solutions are. The question is, how do you unleash the private sector investment and also new investments, pension funds, to actually scale up the operations at country level, including in fragile contexts, because that is going to be the key. It's not everyone is the Rwandas and the Cote d'Ivoires of this world. How do you handle the Sahel? How do you handle the Horn of Africa with a continent which is cohesive, because that is the only solution for regional and continental trade integration.
Just quickly, but I would like to say that we don't know how to eradicate malnutrition, but we know how to decrease malnutrition, and we can start by decreasing malnutrition. Of course, it's more complicated. Here, you've got one product and you save children. It's very easy, and so about wash, sanitation, agriculture, education, it's about health, it's about nutrition. We've got tools to decrease. It's a choice also, and the choice of course, when children are dying, you can't say, okay, we won't save them to prevent. But when do we break the cycle?
Well, thank you. I know we're having this conversation in the midst of a crisis at the moment. There are many crises that are going on, but also a challenging time which makes us need to rethink. And I think rethinking is an opportunity. It's an opportunity for us to really think about where are we getting the biggest impact, which we've heard today, to think about how we think about strengthening systems, how we're looking at the importance of data, the importance of information to help us to predict where challenges are going to be so we can intervene at the right times, to think about how we are also thinking about partnerships and collaboration so that we're bringing together people to get that plus and. It's not everyone fighting their fight in their own individual lane, but trying to work together to get that build. And I think, we have 5 years left or less than 5 years to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, the World Health Assembly nutrition targets. So the urgency is greater than ever. But I do believe, listening to this conversation and hearing some of the other conversations, that there is pathways, and this crisis can create opportunity to break through and move forward. I think the government of France, we're looking for continued leadership on nutrition during the presidency of the G7 next year, and hoping that will continue to be an opportunity to take some stock on what happened only 7 months ago at M4G, but also as we're going forward and accelerate some of the implementation, the commitments there. And so I think this is, there are bright spots there, and we see them in different parts of the world of things working, of numbers coming down. We have got numbers going up in parts as well, but we are seeing some progress. And so I'm leaving this conversation with energy to get back into it and get on with it. So please join me in thanking our speakers, David, Leonard, Adeline, and Will. And thank you for all coming.